Another firing in the Big Ten, wide open races in the NFL, and the NHL has its own surprises only 1 week into the new season. Going into State College, Pennsylvania, James Franklin's been fired. The 12th-year coach failed in consistently defeating Ohio State, Owen. He lost 8 in a row. Ever since getting the coaching job to lead the Nittany Lions back in 2014, he just has not established continuity in the biggest of games. Lost to Notre Dame, the Orange Bowl in the College Bowl playoff semifinal. As he was fired on Sunday, Penn State Athletic Director Pat Kraft told reporters he's missed out on consistently using resources to develop talent at the highest level. His losses to overmatched Big Ten teams, UCLA, Northwestern, signaled a transition. Now Penn State leads for that generational leadership it needs moving forward to lead this program.
Yeah, and I think this is just all about Penn State trying to reach that next step. Like, it's not like James Franklin didn't have a ton of success there, and they made the playoff last year, losing in the semifinal, as he touched on. I just think Penn State and Pat Kraft are looking for more consistency. They feel that they're at an upper echelon program that can contend for national championships year in, year out. And with James Franklin, again, not a whole lot of success versus Ohio State. 5-4 against Northwestern with that loss last weekend. So just some inconsistency there for sure. And it's not like this team hasn't dove into the transfer portal in recent years to find more talent, and definitely recruiting at a high level, especially on the defensive side of the ball, albeit the defense hasn't performed at a high level this year. It'll be interesting to see who becomes the next Penn State head coach, and they're definitely going to be looking for a big name, but they also said they'd give the interim coach a chance. So it'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of big names out there, and we'll have to see if one of these coaches potentially leaves the spot where they're at to take on this challenge in State College.
And this needs to be the name that's almost won at unlikely spots, or may not be a current coach, but currently is affiliated with the Penn State brand. I'm thinking even someone like Lynn, who's a cornerback at Penn State. Now he's the defensive coordinator at USC. Then you also think of someone like Eli Drinkwitz. Dan Mullen's been in the conversation, but he's just had a glass of water at UNLV. Alex Golish is somebody who's definitely been deserving in the minds of many college football analysts nationally to make the step up from group of 6 to leading program. Could it be as big as Penn State, though? That's what still keeps me second guessing that potential decision. As you said, this is somebody who needs to get this program in the right direction right now.
100%, yeah, and I'd even go bigger. It could be a coach that's at a spot right now when you look at some of these other teams that are having success, like a Matt Rule, Kurt Cignetti, some of these other coaches. Like, Penn State's a really good job, so I wouldn't be surprised if a coach left in a position that they're at to maybe take on this challenge, but we'll have to see. I personally don't expect uh, a guy like Matt Rule or Kurt Cignetti to leave the spot where they're at, where they're building and having success. I definitely think it could be like an Alex Golish or somebody, or even a guy like Joe Brady with the Buffalo Bills, who had success when he was the offensive coordinator with LSU, albeit he had Joe Burrow and some really good talent. But it's going to be interesting to see. So that name definitely wouldn't shock me either.
I know I mentioned D'Anton Lynn, the defensive coordinator at USC. Something to point out about that, he's led a massive one-season turnaround on the defensive side at USC. Trojans have held opponents to an average of just over 24 points per game, and that was a near 14-point improvement from the prior season in 2023. Then all of a sudden, it's second in the Big Ten Conference in third down conversion percentage defense. At the same time, though, it may even behoove Penn State to look for somebody who's more than just a defensive mind or an offensive guy, if you know what I mean. That's why I think Alex Golish could be a great candidate, but maybe not the ultimate one that they move forward with, albeit I do think it's warranted that he gets a call in this process. Because as much as he's talked about for a Power 4 head coaching job, Penn State's talking about bringing back someone as recent as Manny Diaz, who is the defensive coordinator from 2022 to 23. He won a Rose Bowl with Penn State in 2022. He developed great talents individually that he didn't initially recruit, but he proved he could do it in a really short time frame. Think about Kobe King, Abdul Carter, the third overall pick, to revive the Giants defense in a small sense this year. So I don't see why someone like a DC at USC couldn't get some deserving looks as much as someone like Manny Diaz, who's proven he can't really coach as of yet.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I mean, just to kind of wrap this up, I don't know if they go with a first year defensive coordinator at a job like USC to kind of take over a big program like that. And Manny Diaz for sure, he had success there. But again, I think they're going to be searching pretty bold. They're gonna come up with a bold name, and I think it'll be a big hire that everybody reacts to. I definitely think they're gonna go outside the box and try to acquire one of these big names and to kind of wrap up this topic. So it'll be interesting to see. Again, I think it'd be pretty interesting if they went with Joe Brady, is who I think had success in college at LSU and is doing it now with Josh Allen in the NFL and has led this Bills offense, albeit a couple hard weeks these past 2 games for the Bills, picking up back-to-back losses, but, I could see Joe Brady potentially being a name that Penn State hires, or maybe, I don't think Nick Saban would come out of retirement, but I know I've seen, uh, with names on a list, I've seen Nick Saban's name thrown out there, but it definitely is a long shot.
Another name to also keep in mind on the firing list as of late, Trent Dilfer, UAB coach, had far less longevity with the Blazers compared to what James Franklin had with Penn State. UAB lost by 20 to Florida Atlantic this week. That seemed as if the bottom fell out in Birmingham. He had lost a lot of road games, particularly having not won one. The Blazers missed a bowl game in 2023 to end a 6-year streak, and he was 6-14 in the American Conference. Time to get into some glimmering performances. Walking the Dogs has us looking at 2 more outstanding individual performances across college football. Oh, and for me, I'm going with the Texas A&M sophomore wide receiver Mario Craver. He didn't find the end zone, but that's irrespective of the fact that he had 2 major catches for 77 receiving yards against Florida at home. He made that 67-yard grab on the Aggies' first drive to set up a rushing touchdown. It was a great performance, and I think it helped set the tone early in that game, what might have been a trap game for the Aggies. Other fella I go with, the USF graduate defensive tackle Jacob Merrifield. He recorded 1 sack and defended one of Drew Meestemaker's passes. He was under duress all afternoon long in a blowout loss for North Texas. Defense also forced Meestemaker's first 3 picks of the season. So I'd figure that those may not be the highest observed ones, but those are still some standout performances.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a couple good names on that list, leading to dominant performances from those respective teams. I'm going with Blake Horvath for Navy with 3 total touchdowns in the game-winning 51-yard touchdown run, and then the 2-point conversion there at the end to avoid an upset versus Temple, and then Texas Tech running back Cameron Dickey in a 42-17 win over Kansas. He had 2 rushing touchdowns with a long of 71 yards. So really good game on the ground for him, and Texas Tech rolled to a 42-17 victory. Those are my 2 guys I'm going with that had really good performances that led to their team's big victories.
Let's get into some big matchups to watch coming for this week. A lot to look forward to. Alabama's back in action, Tennessee as well. Oh, and SEC are teams that we've talked about a lot on this show. Of course, Ohio State did what it had to do in taking care of a ranked Illinois team. So you think forward, now Indiana has all the momentum. Looks like a national championship beyond a college football playoff berth again on the minds of those in Bloomington, Indiana this season. Which matchups are you looking forward to seeing most?
Definitely that Tennessee Alabama one, Ole Miss and Georgia. Of course, USC Notre Dame. Notre Dame taking on a ranked USC team, which is big for their playoff hopes if they continue to have success. And then on Friday night, Louisville and Miami. But to start with the Tennessee Bama game, like both teams kind of have a couple of injuries. The last time Tennessee beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa was 2003 in a 5 overtime game. Obviously, overtime rules are a little bit different now, but be interesting to see if Tennessee despite potentially having a couple injuries in the running back room and Joey Aguilar taking a shot at the end of the Arkansas game with some sore ribs, potentially see how he feels throughout the week. But it's going to be interesting to see if Tennessee can run the ball in Alabama. I think that's a big factor. And then obviously not turning the ball over for this volunteer offense. And if Aguilar can command this offense and hit the big plays, I feel like this game is going to be very high scoring. I don't, I think it's going to be a close game. If Tennessee doesn't win outright, I definitely think they cover the 7.5 or 8.5 point underdog that they'll be in this game. But I would really love to see a Tennessee win. As far as Ole Miss and Georgia, I'm interested to see how Ole Miss shakes off their rocky performance in a 3 point victory over Washington State last weekend. Student section didn't show up. Lane Kiffin was very vocal on that, but now they're going on the road to Georgia in between the hedges. I think with Chambliss, he still played a good game, but it's gonna be interesting to see for me to see if Ole Miss can come out and play a lot better, which I think they will do because they had such a not a fantastic performance against Washington State. So I think they'll be up for the challenge like they were last year. And as far as you know, USC Notre Dame, can Notre Dame keep it rolling? I think it's as simple as that with the two-headed monster they got at running back. This USC defense, you touched on their improvements with a potential for their defensive coordinator to maybe get an interview with Penn State, but a lot of a lot of great action, and I think all these games are going to come down to just who can not make the stupid mistake, right? I think is what you look for in top 25 battles or top 10 battles.
Another matchup that I think a lot of people are going to want to watch as it relates to identifying a new leader in the Big 12, especially given that Iowa State had a letdown. Looking at BYU, Utah, that could be really important, I think, moving forward for what the outcomes of this conference involve this season. Something to mention about the Big 12, Houston was one of four undefeated Big 12 teams entering October before losing its first game to Texas Tech, which has been ranked the majority of the season. There are only two unbeatens remaining in the Big 12 right now. That's BYU and Texas Tech. Each are at 6-0 and 3-0 in the Big 12. I can't wait to see a matchup that can maybe decide how good these teams look. If it's BYU and Texas Tech as the ultimate teams playing in the Big 12 championship, but that's still a long ways away, isn't it? Looks like you're muted, Mr. Kasanovich.
Apologies. Don't sleep on Utah. I think this BYU Utah game is going to be a fun one. I know Utah's on the road, but they're actually favored against this BYU team, and I like that. Dampier's a really good young quarterback, of course, transferring from New Mexico, and Utah's going to be hungry. They've lost two in a row now in this holy war to the BYU Cougars. So I think this is going to make a statement. They didn't quite hit their first test when they took on Texas Tech, as we talked about in that game a couple weeks ago, and Baron Morton and company really handed it to Utah at home. Texas Tech, I think, has arguably the best defense in the country, is definitely up there with the likes of Texas. And I know Oklahoma's defense started out strong in that first half, but Texas was able to hit some big third down conversions to kind of keep them on the field. So, that was one of the best defenses in the country. And I think Utah is still a complete team. So that'll be a fun game to watch. And I would not be surprised if Utah wins this one to add a little chaos with three one-loss teams, or to add some, not separation, but get Utah back into this picture with Texas Tech.
Speaking of Texas Tech, talk about a bounce back game and the game of the season, to be quite frank, with Arizona State. It's only the sixth all-time meeting between Texas Tech and Arizona State. And Texas Tech is only one of two teams in the country ranked in the top 10 in both scoring defense and total defense. And that's been their calling card ever since really fall camp, because they've Romello Height, the Georgia Tech transfer, that's fortified that defensive line. And as it relates to what Arizona State can do better, trailing 21-3 at halftime against Utah last week, trying to contain quarterbacks. Kenny Dillingham, he said in his weekly press conference how accountability is something that all falls back on him. Everybody he recruits in that Sun Devils program has to continue emphasizing a certain standard. If it's not, it's going to show up on game day, and then again, it all circles back to him. And that's just yet another viral clip that seemingly you see once every month throughout the regular season from Kenny Dillingham, because that's how influential a leader he is. But that, I think, also speaks in a twofold sense of how much he not only cares about his job, but returning Arizona State to the national level as he did last year and keeping it there for this season.
Yeah, 100%. I really like Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State. I think he's one of the better young and upcoming coaches in college football for sure. It'll be interesting to see if they have their quarterback back. I know Levitt missed last week's game, and I hate to pick on Jeff Sims, but we've kind of seen the Jeff Sims story throughout his college career. He hasn't really played the best, so if he has to miss another game, Arizona State could be in trouble. But again, it's chaos in the Big 12. We thought Iowa State before back-to-back losses against Cincinnati, who I still think Cincinnati's in that picture. I mean, they have played really well. We'll see, we'll see how they finish down the stretch with, with their schedule. I don't have it on hand, but I'm not sure if they have a tough schedule to finish or not. But you got to put Cincinnati with the likes of especially if Utah can knock off BYU, with Utah, BYU, this Texas Tech team, and because we thought Iowa State potentially was gonna be able to avoid potentially some losses. They've lost 2 in a row, so this Big 12 is getting very interesting. But I definitely really like Cincinnati and Brendan Sorsby. This offense is ridiculous. It doesn't seem like it matters what defense they're going up against on paper. That might seem really good. This offense continues to put up points, and that is really surprising, to be honest. Not that it's surprising, but it just the way they're doing it uh, week after week is just really impressive.
Well, what might be impressive as well for Cincinnati is how well it can still finish the season. It doesn't really have, at least as of now, a ton of ranked opponents left, though, and it gets Oklahoma State on the road this week. It's a primetime game in Stillwater. Of course, Oklahoma State had the shirtless fans in the stands that also was viral on Twitter for a while. Then it's back home against Baylor. Utah on the road, that could be a loss. Looking at Arizona the week after that, Noah Fafita has been relatively effective and consistent for the Wildcats this season. Number 15, BYU at home, and then TCU on the road to close out the regular season. Can't think that Cincinnati finishes outside the top 3, especially as we realize Iowa State isn't the standalone contender in the conference right now with how well the other teams that we mentioned are playing. Time to get into the higher level of football now. Off to the NFL Blitz. Oh, and I can't move past Lions Chiefs for whatever reason. That game had so much aura to it that didn't even have to do with how the game was played schematically and technique wise. Open field tackling was an issue for the Lions, but everything that ensued off the field once the clock hit zeros also caught a lot of people's attention.
Yeah, again, I mean, I'm not gonna, the NFL gets its sense of haters because they feel like matchups are rigged. I mean, I didn't think Mahomes got any calls or anything like that, maybe one. But yeah, this Lions defense really struggled to stop the Chiefs offense, and Kansas City really needed this one to get back to 3-3. You're referencing the little scuffle, you could call it, I guess, or whatever, at the end of the game. Apparently, Juju Smith-Schuster with a low block in the back to Brian Branch. Brian Branch doesn't like it. He's been known to kind of have some on the field antics, whether that's with Tucker Kraft of the Packers or in this case Smith Schuster just punches him, kind of gives him a little hit right to the helmet, and thus ensues a brawl. And he's suspended for 1 game, but I just think there's no place for that. And I'm gonna try to keep a bias here, but or a non-bias here, but Brian Branch is just one of these guys that he has to be smarter. Like he's done this a couple times now, and in my opinion, he gets away with a little too much trash talk, and I get it. The taunting penalties are not, you know, they can be weak at times throughout NFL games. So, I would just like to see him keep his temper down. I understand he was frustrated, but did you see the shot where like Patrick Mahomes went to like shake his hand and he just slapped it away? It's like, come on, man. Like, just take it. I'm not gonna say the Lions were sore losers because I respect the way Dan Campbell addressed that situation, but a little sore losership going on there from the Lions defensive back.
Well, and also considering how much or how far the Lions have come since week 1 in Green Bay. They knew that facing this formerly 0-2 Chiefs team was a setback. They didn't do what they had to do. Of course, the trick play they ran for Goff, Montgomery was a high school quarterback. They figured that would have worked. Now they still wonder if they were robbed of 4 points. And honestly, when you failed to report, they brought in Terry McAuley on the Sunday Night Football NBC broadcast. He even confirmed how Goff didn't exactly report correctly because he had too much. I think it was too much continuation basically in how he ran out toward not the flat obviously, but toward the boundary. And I agreed with that honestly. In an all neutral sense, that was the right way to go about ruling that instead of giving the Lions the go ahead touchdown there. It's
Yeah, I mean,
and they're exposed, and their injury riddled secondary was exposed too. So even if they weren't rather robbed of 4 points, this was a game that they weren't good enough in the back end there.
yeah, didn't mean to cut you off. I was gonna
Yeah.
say, yeah, especially with a backup secondary, pretty much. I mean, you're not gonna beat Mahomes and the Chiefs, and yeah, that basically what happened there is like if he doesn't start under center and I don't know if he has to report or whatever, but basically he has to be set. If
Yeah.
he comes from, the quarterback position, he was never set. He was moving. So I agreed with that call early in that game as well. And I mean, I like Dan Campbell's aggressiveness, excuse me. I like the fact that he goes for it, but sometimes I feel like he just takes it a little bit too far, and they have these trick plays, and oh, it's cool when it works, but just let's play football. Like let's not, try to get too tricky or do these things. But that's the way the Dan Campbell Lions are led, and interesting performance from them. The defense obviously didn't cut it. And how about Baker Mayfield with essentially his fourth and third string through fifth string wide receivers? I mean, another incredible game from Baker Mayfield. This Buccaneers team is for real. I mean, he had an incredible run. I mean, Baker Mayfield might be leading the MVP conversation right now.
I mean, it was interesting to see that because the Buccaneers, they took advantage of Warner's absence and Bosa's for that matter, almost on the ensuing drive. The Buccaneers averaged nearly 7.5 yards per play after Warner left the game with that ankle injury. And the defensive letdowns were apparent following the biggest headline of the weekend in the league for the 49ers specifically. I figured that Baker would take care of it. And he's somebody who may raise questions about how consistently he can lead teams. Saw it in Cleveland for so long. Now they're hoping that Dylan Gabriel isn't the next coming of that, but I have a lot of confidence in the Buccaneers that they can get it done. Also, and I think something else to remember here is how the Jaguars simply aren't invincible. And the Seahawks had one of the top ranked defenses in the preseason. They made a record 7 sacks under Trevor Lawrence. And even for DeMarcus Lawrence, who was out with the quad injury, he had a season high 2 sacks, and what a return it was for him.
Yeah, this Seahawks defense is for real. I mean, they do a great job, and it's weird. We remember the Seahawks, especially under that Pete Carroll led teams, that they were always really good at home. Well, Mike McDonald, I think, is a crazy like 11-1 or something like that on the road, and that's kind of like a college type team, where you just go on the road and you take that and you just let the atmosphere play for yourself, and you're able to dominate. And Sam Darnold's played very well over there too, been able to run the ball and pass the ball effectively on offense. This Seattle team is definitely one to watch out for in a competitive NFC West. I mean, we don't know how long Puka Nacua will be out with that ankle slash foot injury. Hopefully not too long, maybe a week, maybe 2 games is what it sounds like. But I mean, you got even with all the injuries too that the 49ers are having right now, I think they're still going to be in that division. So you got a three-headed race right now for first place in that NFC West. It's going to be one to watch with the Rams, Seahawks, and uh, 49ers. I couldn't think of them for a second to watch as we enter the midway point of the NFL season. So definitely a lot of exciting action, and the Bears were able to squeak out a victory, getting some revenge on Washington on Monday night on one of the Monday Night Football games as well.
It was. And one thing I want to also mention about the NFC West, there's no way I could see a major rally right now from the Arizona Cardinals. It doesn't sit well with me when you're starting Jacoby Brissett, who has failed to secure himself a spot as a starter in so many other clubs. I see so many other, it's really less than a handful, but he didn't do in New England. And now he's trying to sew everything together with the Cardinals, and he couldn't get effective red zone conversions and engineer some good fourth quarter drives in Indianapolis against the Colts this past weekend either.
Yeah, I mean, they put up 27 points on the Colts, lost a close one, but yeah, you know why Kyler Murray missed that game, right?
Yes, of course.
There's a new video game out.
I know.
He had to he had to play it, so, "Coach, my foot hurts. I can't run around like I have been able to this season." So
Foot hurts as if it fell asleep in the basement in reality.
yeah, so, we'll see if Kyler comes back to play this weekend against Green Bay, but yeah, a lot of good NFL action there, so, be interesting to see what all, goes down, starting Thursday with the Steelers and, uh, Bengals with the, icy hot battle of the 40-year-old quarterbacks, as, Cam Hayward said.
Isn't that something? And honestly, without forgetting the Giants and the Eagles either, Owen, because these were two teams that seriously had some identity crises offensively. Nick Sirianni held a meeting with the offensive line, wide receivers, trying to get them on the same page of Jalen Hurts. They don't run the ball enough, though. And I think, as Dan Orlovsky pointed out on NFL Live on Thursday before the game was on Prime, how it's so easy to anticipate, for whatever reason, how Saquon Barkley is either taking an outside run, or if it's an inside zone run, or if it's going to be a toss out of the backfield, just based on how his feet are positioned, and with that slanted stance out of the gun. And it's something that was easy pickings for the Giants. They also got a lot of momentum out of Cam Scatterbo too.
Yeah, and I think one thing you gotta remember too is they're probably gonna lessen the workload on Saquon a little bit this year too. I mean, he had a historic season last year. Obviously, it frustrates fantasy managers, including myself, but but no, I mean, yeah, it's crazy to me. Speaking of the Eagles, like through 2 weeks, we thought the Packers looked like the best team in football. Now it's kind of like, well, it's not the Eagles anymore. Could it be the 5-1 Colts? Is it some of these other teams? In Jacksonville. But there's really no one dominant team in the NFL right now, and I think the NFL likes that. It creates parity. But yeah, I mean, shout out Cam Scatterbo and Jackson Dart with 3 touchdowns each against that Eagles defense, and they really showcased it on this past Thursday. That hey, I know they lost against the Saints, but a big comeback win. I mean, you got to imagine not a lot of people had the Giants winning against Philadelphia at home, especially after Philly lost to Denver. So yeah, there's a shockwaves coming through the NFL right now, if you will, and it'll be interesting to see what this weekend brings.
Well, and something that also doesn't surprise people as of right now is what the Dolphins are going through. They only lost by 3 points to the Chargers and Cameron Dickert's walk-off field goal. So even as much parity as there is, the Dolphins don't seem to have much of a role in it. But again, this is a team that may not have Mike McDaniel in that coach sheet for much longer. Well, the NFL season is well underway, and it's hardly halfway, really even a third of the way through, as a matter of fact. One season that's just gotten underway, however, the NHL season, and what a start it's been for Kirill Kaprizov. He was rewarded with an 8-year deal this offseason, and the Minnesota Wilds have seen him start with 11 points, 5 goals, 6 assists. He had a goal and assist last night against the Dallas Stars, a 5-2 loss for the Wilds in Dallas. Their 5-game road trip continues Friday in DC against the all-time goals leader Alex Ovechkin and the Caps. Last season, it seemed like the Wild were a little bit of an overlooked, under the radar team to get after a Stanley Cup Finals appearance. This season, by the way they're scoring on the power play against the Kings a couple of nights ago at home, it was 3 unanswered goals to start the game. Boldy, Kaprizov, cashed in. They looked great. This is a team now that seems to be all but a front runner for a Stanley Cup Final appearance.
100%. I mean, I'm not too much into hockey, but I understand the game, right? I know I love watching Stanley Cup playoffs, and there's always 6 to 8 teams that have a chance to win the cup, and Minnesota is definitely one of those. And you touched on kind of them being underrated these past couple of seasons or these last 5 years with Kaprizov. I mean, he's one of the best young hockey players in the game. And Minnesota is always a team that finishes top three in the Central Division these last 5 years, or a wild card spot. They're always really competitive, and I think 100% maybe they are finally hitting their stride. They're not a team that's going to be one that plays well all throughout the season, but doesn't maybe garner the respect as like the Florida Panthers or the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Oilers, some of these other teams that are really good these last couple of years that make deep Stanley Cup playoff runs. But Minnesota can definitely do that. That's what's the one piece that's been missing is just getting out of that first round these past couple of years and making a run. So if Kaprizov and this power play unit can continue to play like that, watch out, hockey. The Wild are for real.
Well, what's also wild, or what would be wild, is if the Avs find a way to stay atop the division without any issues, with a certain level of separation, the way Nathan MacKinnon plays, the Avs have only taken one overtime loss this season. So they're racking up points, they're consistent, and they're a really fun team to watch as well. Florida Panthers seemingly unbothered, or unimpeded rather, by the loss of Sasha Barkov with his season-ending injury. Brad Marchand was a key addition for them at the trade deadline in their back-to-back Stanley Cup final run. Well, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring you Broadway Books. Owen has a ton of singles and parlays to certainly look into for this weekend, if not put into action. And then also another edition of the Owening Line. Owen, can we get an update on how the Pittsburgh Panthers do toward pursuing that over of 6.5 wins?
We need 3 more wins, Wyatt. 3 more. A big upset against Florida State at home. We need 3 more wins, and obviously with Syracuse and I believe Stanford coming up in the next couple weeks, it's looking pretty good. Now, obviously, they got to finish with 3 tough games, but if they could win the next 2, get to 6, and potentially knock off Notre Dame or Miami at the end of the season, or whoever in one of those final 3 games, he doesn't like it because he's a Miami fan, folks. But
I don't like it because Notre Dame won't lose again after the 0-2 start.
yeah, I know it's tough. It's tough. It's tough.
Even if
But
they're honoring Aaron Donald's jersey at the game, he's not stepping back in those cleats.
yeah, yeah. That I mean, no, he's not. But you never know. It's football. The game's played between the lines, and
Two turnovers in the first half that could decide a lot.
yeah. I mean, we'll see. But it's going strong, and no parlays yet. No putting together any of that action yet. That'll probably come closer to the weekends. I mean, there's some tricky lines too, and I actually have a couple of them. Like if LSU plus 2.5 against Vandy, plus money. Georgia Tech plus 2.5, now down to 1.5, and Georgia minus 7.5, with Florida also 9.5. Like I'm going with these are the teams that I have written down for the plays, but we're going with Georgia Tech money line, LSU money line, Penn State money line, which I know is super risky, but here's why. And I know it's a night game in Iowa, and that's one of the toughest atmospheres. It sucks James Franklin's not there anymore because he's actually played. His teams have done pretty well in those atmospheres. But you fired James Franklin, the boys will be fired up. You can still get to 9 wins if they win out and go 9-3. But so I like Penn State to win that one. I mean, Iowa's offense is Iowa's offense. Penn State's defense has got to perform at some point. We're going Utah money line in that game against BYU in the Holy War. Bowling Green minus 4.5 against Central Michigan. The Central Michigan team's just awful. So we like that. We're going Baylor money line against TCU, who looked very terrible or very bad against K-State on the road. I can't trust TCU to just bounce back at home the way they perform. So we're going to go with Baylor and that high scoring offense there. We're taking the Houston Cougs money line. I like Houston in at home against Arizona. Ole Miss plus 7.5. And to no surprise, because I think this game is going to be a blowout, and maybe they'll score first and lose. But I got the over 41.5 in Ohio State, Wisconsin, because we know how that's going to go. If they lost last week 37-0, Ohio State can walk in there with their shoes untied and put up 34 points. So those are the plays. We'll obviously get into a parlay for Saturday and figure one out for you. Maybe even a teaser as well, and obviously go over the NFL action when we get to second down Sunday or after the Saturday games are complete and what we like on the NFL slate. But yeah, I mean, tell me where I go wrong. Tell me where your expertise here is like you're just way off. I feel like there is probably a couple, but unless from your vantage point, what do you like?
Well, I don't ever put any action on these games, but if anything, I would probably fade Miami to cover just because of how much Louisville can create problems and particularly on consecutive drives. Saw it against Pittsburgh 3 weeks ago. Louisville staged that massive comeback in the fourth quarter, right? I would probably I don't know the line specifically, so that'd be something to pay attention to on our Twitter and Instagram pages as Owen always gets those for you on the plays for the week. But I'd probably fade that. Ohio State, Wisconsin, I'd probably take Ohio spread first half. That's something I think that's safe. I mean, Ohio State rather could be blindfolded and have Julian Sain throw 2 interceptions. Somehow Jeremiah Smith would still catch and run for 2, 3 touchdowns in the first half. So I think that could be an existent play. And then one other play I could probably think of that I think would be worth taking is a Utah money line. I probably wouldn't go Utah spread because Utah is just not that kind of team. It hasn't proven that it has the defense to limit quarterbacks to 150 yards in conference play. But that'd be something I'd really be strong on. I also take TCU to cover as well. TCU has got a lot of production out of its redshirt senior tight end DJ Rogers. He's one of 2 Power 4 tight ends with at least 15 targets I read earlier this week, and has a PFF grade of 75 or greater to block and receive. So I think those are good plays in my book. What do you think?
Well, I definitely agree with everything you said about Ohio State against Wisconsin. Wisconsin could put 14 guys on the field, and they probably couldn't stop Ohio State. And I'll take that TCU spread into consideration. They just played butt awful last week for me, so we'll see if they can bounce back. And if not aside, maybe because Baylor can put up points, TCU can certainly bounce back and put up some points. Maybe a lot of points in that showdown. But another full slate of games for us to go over and then looking forward to, and we have for you. So that's what we have for you. Nothing. I don't think a whole lot will change between now Wednesday afternoon and Saturday as far as lines. They usually stay pretty consistent, don't move too much. But yeah, definitely a lot of action for you. And I'll just say this: uh, here in Nashville, it's not a Vandy guy, so we're going for Tennessee. So we'll have the checkered overalls on, no shirt with the checkered overalls. It's a big showdown. Hopefully they can continue their good season with Joey Aguilar under center. If Tennessee beats Alabama, last thought before we sign off, their percentage to jump into the playoffs is 58%, which is really strong.
That is very strong. If you're looking for a good NHL matchup to watch tonight, highly recommend Florida and Detroit at Little Caesars. That could be a very good game, especially featuring 2 forwards with plus-minus ratings of 3. That's Gus Forsling for the Panthers and Dylan Larkin for the Red Wings. They are really off to a great start, both teams this season. Detroit got a convincing win on the road in Toronto. For Owen Kasanovich, I'm Wyatt Kopelman saying so long and stay tuned for Frontline Football. Cheers to another great week of action here in Week 8.